All right, we'd like to welcome everyone to City Council today. Those who are watching on TV and all those who are in our chambers, thank you for being here. We're going to start with our motivational talk and prayer. Austin Gordon is going to do that for us. If you'd come on up, thank you. Right, you stand right there and talk into the mic and look at us. Nope. Look, because the camera, see, there's 40 million people on TV land watching you.
That's what it is.
So,
No pressure. 40 million.
Okay, to quickly introduce myself, I am the mayor of the Smash Fork Youth City Council. And so our theme for this year was to lead, serve, inspire. So our theme for this year was to help get the leadership skills to some of our youth, serve Spanish Fork, and help to inspire those around us. And I'm super excited for this year. It's already been so fun. So,
right.
all right. Our dear Father which art in heaven, we are so very grateful for this time we have to be able to be here. We pray that as we are here, that we might be able to think of those who are in need of help around in our city, and that we might be able to do the things that they want us to do. Please us that we might be able to keep thee in our hearts and be able to keep the city the best that we can. We pray that we might be able to choose the right, and we say these things in the Son of Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Austin. All right, I've asked Councilmember Beck to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand and repeat the pledge after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we'll move into public comments. And just a reminder, come up, you got 3 minutes, and we'll have a clock on the screen here, so please adhere to that. I don't want to be rude, but once you're 3 minutes, I'll ask you to please stop, and we'll let everybody talk that wants to. And if you have something different, don't repeat it all. We love to hear everybody, but let's not go over the same thing every time. So thank you. Anybody like to come up, please come up. State your name.
Hi, I am Diane Garcia, and I own the fields next to the proposed amended preliminary plat Annie's Acres that you will be voting on later to approve as is or with changes and requirements. In my fields live the magical insect called fireflies. They have been there for over 150 years. Their entire life cycle occurs in the fields. During the last week in May, the entire month of June, and the first part of July, we are able to enjoy the magical display of lights as the fireflies find a mate and create the next generation. Dark skies are very important as the light pollution interferes and disrupts this process. I am requesting that Annie's Acres redesign their plat so that there are no homes facing Bradford Lane. They can make the 2 rows of homes on the east end the new cottage design so that they do not lose the number of homes, just the direction they face. That they put a 6-foot masonry fence to define the development on the east side and plant trees to minimize light pollution. That the city and the HOA require that all outdoor lighting be dark sky compliant to minimize light pollution. This is Spanish Fork City's opportunity to not allow growth and development to be a beast that devours a delicate environment that nature has created and that all the human planning, architecture, and engineering can never duplicate or recreate, but rather use growth and development as a tool in balance with restraint and respect to provide a home for citizens to partake of an elevated quality of life next to a field of fireflies, where natural beauty and pioneer heritage thrive. There are many in our community that have lived back east or traveled the world and experienced the magic of fireflies away from our community. What a blessing for them to have those opportunities. There are many in our community that do not have those opportunities, and we have that gift and blessing right here to share and elevate. Other cities in our county and state have blazed the brave and responsible trail to require dark sky lighting in their communities to enhance the quality of life for their citizens. We can follow their example. Spanish Fork is known and proud of the rodeo history and the state-of-the-art arena where cowboys' dreams come true. Just down the road and around the bend, where arena lights don't shine is a field of fireflies where thousands of dreams come true.
Thank you. Hey, I'd ask you, please, hold the applause. We're not here to do that. We're here to hear for everybody, and we don't want the boos or the applause, and I appreciate that. So anyone else would like to come up, I'd love to have you come up.
Hi, Mayor, City Council people. My name is Teresa Facer. I am on the library board currently for the Spanish Fork Library, and I'm here as an advocate for a new library. I wanted to let you know that I have been volunteering there for many years, and currently I'm on the library board, and I wanted to present 3 reasons why I feel that we need a larger library in our community. My first reason is we need to increase the capacity of the library to promote literacy and meeting the needs of our growing community. Number 2, we need more space to provide all the educational programs that the library offers. I have a list of just a few things that the library is offering this fall. There are many more things. Among them are music and movement, STEAM programs, the science, technology, engineering, art, and math programs, computer coding, parent and family activities. A third reason that we need a new library is more space will accommodate more people so that we can have more social interaction, thus building a stronger community. And a fourth reason for, not a fourth reason, physically, I think our city is able to handle a new library. I support our current city manager's proposal that he is suggesting for financing it, and I think that because our city has the second lowest property tax rate in the county, that we are in a good position to be able to fund it. And in closing, I just wanted to share a story. The library has been a part of my family's life for a long time, and my 3-year-old during story time many years ago, she's my oldest now, when she was 3, she learned how to write her name during story time. So I could share many stories like that, but I won't. But I feel that it's important for us to have a new library in this community because ours is small, and a new one would strengthen us in many ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to come up? Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Lene Millett. I'm from Orem. I grew up in Heber Valley. I have memories of riding my horse at midnight, doing the watering turn of the pastures. I'm sure a lot of people in Spanish Fork do that too still. One time when I did that, there were fireflies in that pasture that our horses used to graze on. And such a magical memories that I have of there in the moonlight, changing the water and watching the fireflies. This last year, I happened to come across a Facebook page of Diane's Firefly Farm down here in Spanish Fork. And we had the unique and incredible opportunity to take our children there and to let them see that. Like I said, I live in Orem, and I'm in the concrete jungle now, and I miss those rural moments of growing up in Midway and those opportunities for my kids. When I heard that there was this chance that there might be some type of hazard or peril to come to this opportunity of the fireflies continuing their development down here in Spanish Fork, I just really wanted to come tonight and stand for Diane and her farm. I think it is just a gem for Spanish Fork. I think anything you can do to preserve that and to get the word out is just a jewel for rural communities everywhere. And I'd like to urge you to please consider ways to work with the developer so he can be happy, and to also work with Diane and her group so they can also preserve this beautiful jewel. So I love Spanish Fork. I've been down here several times to play baseball and soccer with my kids, and it just reminds me of Heber a lot, and I really hope that you can make those considerations to help with the light pollution that she's worried about. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Suzette Saxton, and I'm on the library board, and I also teach the Crochet Circle group at the Spanish Fork Library. But I actually wanted to talk to you today about why libraries are so important to teens. I have 2 teenage daughters, and the library is one of the last safe gathering spaces that teens can meet in person. And the way that the library is now, it doesn't really have a separate section that's just for teenagers. And the Payson Library is another library that we sometimes go to because they have such a unique area for teens where my daughters feel very at home and comfortable. And as a family who does not attend church regularly, it's very important for my daughters to be able to go to a place and have classes and interact with their peers, and it's given them a really strong sense of community. And so I, just as a mother of teen children, would really hope that we can build a library to accommodate all the things that have been brought up, but also with a special thought towards the teen citizens of Spanish Fork City. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, let's move into council comments. Councilmember Beck.
Hopefully Scott's going to get a computer working. We'll see. First of all, Austin Gordon, thank you for coming today. He, as he said, will be serving as the mayor of the Youth City Council this upcoming year. And it's just such a great group of kids. I've said this before, but if you're watching the Youth City Council, you can apply. Just hop on our city's website, and I think there's currently 50 to 60 youth. There's a lot of service opportunities, and I'm just so impressed by their leadership skills and for Austin's upbeat attitude. Last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, he emailed everyone and just gave his personal email and phone number to all the youth and just saying, hey, I'm always here. If you're ever having a bad day, reach out for me. And I just appreciated that in Austin, so thank you. And then the other night, was it Thursday night, Chad and I were able to receive this award that we would like to present. It is for Utah County Fair Citizens Choice Award for the mutton bustin' sheep. We had Whitney Hancock design our sheep this year, and all of the cities throughout the county designed a sheep, and voters throughout the entire county voted. And I just thought it was super cool that Spanish Fork won because it was hosted here, so there we go.
How many cotton balls?
Oh,
there it
there's
is.
the sheep. Chad, how many cotton balls are on that sheep? Chad, it was only Thursday night.
Wasn't there seven?
Now's the chance you can just make it up.
Almost 6,500, 64. She had exactly the
Yeah,
number.
she did have exactly, I think like
6,500 cotton balls.
67.
I think it's 6,667.
Okay. It was a soft sheep with a little girl right in her mutton bustin'. Anyways, it was a fun night, and to go out and receive that trophy on behalf of our city. I also wanted to thank those who came tonight to speak on behalf of the library. I really appreciate that. 2 weeks ago, the council voted to hold the property tax rates and increase the rates so we can have a new library and a new fire station. And since that council meeting, I've met with some staff, and over the last couple of weeks, the staff and I and our director kind of just compiled some numbers in a quick time frame. So thanks, Scott and Myra. But as you can see, these are some of the numbers. Just so people can get on our website and look at this, it'll also be on our social media. Approximately 10,386 visits and that's just an increase over the last 4 years. So since I've been serving, it's increased that many. And I mean, I won't go over every single number, but so you can hop on or just quickly glance at up there and see the need and the increase. The programs have increased by nearly 2,000 attendance, and the circulation getting close to 500,000 things. So I appreciate you guys coming up with all of that. And as the feasibility committee starts to meet, we will try to continue to produce things like this that are visually appealing and easy to just get numbers really quick and be able to look at what's going on and timelines and so forth. So, and I think I'm sure someone else will say this, but the public safety, thank you, Chief Adams, for everyone that was at North Park on Monday night for the the big event there. They gave away over 1,000 hot dogs, and the ambulance and fire trucks and police and the canine, everyone was there. And then on the first morning of school, yesterday morning, Monday morning, 2 elementary schools had a red carpet event. And I was up at East Meadows Elementary at that one, and there's a brand new principal there. He came from a sistering city. I won't name names, but he said it was like pulling teeth to get our officers at our school. And I can't believe how often Clint Peterson, our officer here, already in his school. We had, I think, 5 officers, several other volunteers besides the principal and staff there. So it was just a really fun event. So thank you to, it's a fun group. So thank you. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Scobes.
Mayor, I don't have anything to report at this time.
Thank you. Councilman Menden.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been wearing this bracelet since last Saturday at the kids market that was held down at the park. I thought I took out enough $5 bills from the bank to make it through there and spread it around a little bit. But with my kids, it wasn't even close to enough. No, we were done after the first few booths and had to go back to the ATM and get some more. But my kids are wearing bracelets. They still got snacks around the house that they visited all those booths. Thank you to the children. Thank you to the parents, the group that put that on. Just fun to see the entrepreneurial spirit of kids making something and then getting their chance to sell it to us. So we had a good time. We even made it over to the farmers market to say hi to the Gordons and say hi to everybody else over there and participate in that. So again, appreciate the Chamber of Commerce and everybody that makes that happen as well. Brandon is going to bring this up during his council comments, but as Stacy went to East Meadows, we went to Park Elementary. I got a really nice text by the former principal today that appreciated that and choked me up again as I told him he had saw a video of it, and I says, I hope I was wearing sunglasses because those kids do something to you. I know that's true at every school. It's emotional to send all of our kids back to school in another year. Man, I appreciate you teachers. I tell this often, but that's what I think I have nightmares about, having to, go to a school and hoodwink kids for an hour or for all day, I guess, multiple classes that I'd know what I was talking about. You guys do it well. You know what you're talking about, and thank you for taking that job and teaching our children. It's a great thing in our community. The Utah League of Cities and Towns, we had a board meeting last week up in Salt Lake City. I'll be attending the Political Subdivisions Committee tomorrow morning to discuss and testify for the growth of Spanish Fork, economic development, housing, a range of issues that we're trying to deal with in Spanish Fork along with other communities and share best practices. So I'll report next council meeting, Mayor, on how that goes and try not to flub that up. One more economic development note is I spent some time last week down in Helper and Price with some clients down there of mine. And I want you to know, I think we think about this, and I get caught up in this, how great our community is and what we've done to try to keep our heritage the way it is and then also grow in a way that's effective for our citizens, that services are here, that they're local and that we can get to them. But my goodness, when you go talk to people down there, and I asked, over 30 or 40 people, how often do you come to Spanish Fork? Do you ever make it up to Spanish Fork? And they say, just about every other day. And they truly do appreciate the economic development, the planning that's went into the process here in Spanish Fork, because they do not get on the freeway for much of anything anymore. They're very excited about the Intermountain Healthcare Hospital coming to fruition, and that will make a lot of them not need to drive on the freeway. And a lot of the older generation of folks that I talked to, they really appreciated that. They can navigate that Highway 6 canyon just fine, but they are worried about getting on the freeway. And so regionally. We know that, but and the sales tax numbers definitely support it. But it was nice to hear from the residents, the good people down in Helper and Price, that we're of service to them as well. That's all I have, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Councilman Gordon.
Just like Mike said, I knew it was time for City Council meeting to start at 6 because the school was calling to inform us that we had a late child or something. And so I haven't missed that over these summer months. But I knew it was 6 o'clock and time for City Council to start. But as Mike mentioned, yesterday morning, as the kids got ready to go to school, we were invited to go out to park for this. And why don't you show it, Scott, what you put together?
I don't know that there will be audio because it's running through my laptop.
Good, we don't want to hear Councilman Gordon. They were picking up some bad habits.
Yeah, I told them that you can see their what do they call the leadership, and they had their names on the back of their shirt, and I explained to the principal that my mom never let me get my name on the back of my shirt because then if I ever got taken, they would know my name. And I tried to explain that no one would ever take me, Mom, but the principal kept giving me the "just stop talking, Brandon" sign. Stop telling these kids. So a lot of fun, amazing kids, amazing teachers, amazing staff. And I know, Mayor's wife is at Park Elementary and has been for many years as a kindergarten teacher. And so her principal, of course, invited us, and as Stacy mentioned, up to East Meadows, and we coordinate with our officers that go around to our elementary schools and do the DARE program. And we're just, again, like Mike said, thankful for all those. We have a great working relationship with the Nebo School District. And if you didn't know that, we share a lot of facilities between Spanish Fork City and the school district. And it sounds like it's not as common with other municipalities. And I appreciate our Parks and Rec Department and city staff, as well as we're so grateful for the Nebo School District and what they do to have that continued working relationship, because we're all in this together. So really fun to be a part of that red carpet yesterday. Really cool.
Well, one side note there, we had the ambulance crew up there with their ambulance, and they got called out during the middle of that. So.
Yeah. Officer Zach Adams got called out. He came back. He got called out. It was certainly a busy morning, I'm sure. So
they did it well.
Yeah. So keep your eyes peeled. There's lots of kids walking to school. So a little change in patterns, obviously. So the Chamber of Commerce. I don't see Heather here with us, the Chamber Director, but I'll kind of fill you in with what's going on there. Tomorrow we have a new networking lunch where we will be visited by Congressman John Curtis, former mayor of Provo. So he will be up at the Oaks Golf Course at noon. And so invite anybody that would like to attend there. He'll obviously be willing and able to answer any questions and be part of a discussion. It's specific usually to our chamber people, but invite anybody if you'd like to come out. Please feel free to do so. And the cost for that is $10 for that luncheon tomorrow. We have a ribbon cutting on Thursday, August 22nd at noon for Bottoms Up Yoga. For those of you that are not aware, the council member that is probably the most seasoned yoga individual is Councilman Scobes.
He's a yogi.
He's a yoga attendee and has found great, he enjoys doing yoga. So he's informed me that I should probably start. It's a good, healthy thing. So we're going to welcome Bottoms Up Yoga as our newest member and have a ribbon cutting for them on Thursday at noon on 122 North Main Street. So appreciate Mike mentioning the farmers market as well. That continues to go on Saturdays, and different crops are starting to come through. I had a text from the McMullins earlier today that they'll be there tomorrow with some peaches, and I know certain people are always looking for different change in produce, and so I know, when you're making salsa, you need your tomatoes and so on and so forth. So encourage everybody to keep supporting our farmers market. It's the best one in the state. And then the last thing, I don't have a lot to report on, but our new fire station construction continues to be in the planning process. So much like Stacy mentioned, there's planning for the library. We're a lot further along, as we obviously have our plans at a certain percentage, but we look to break ground in, is that going to be October 2nd? So looking forward to that, we start seeing a building get built, but certainly we plan and want to make sure we're building a building that's going to last a very, very long time for our firefighters and public safety individuals. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Argyle.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to just second on what Mike talked about a couple of Saturdays ago when we had our Children's Entrepreneurial Day. How awesome is that to walk around? I had an opportunity to talk to a few of the kids, and when you ask them what they've done or what they've made and see the excitement on their face, one particular person, I asked him what he'd done, and he told me how he'd made it and everything. And I asked him if he was making a profit on that, and he kind of giggled, and he said, a whole bunch. I ended up buying one of the things he was selling. But to see those kids do samples and come over and ask you to come and try their product, teeny little kids asking you to try their product and then selling it and then thanking you for doing business with them was awesome. And I appreciate those that put that on, and awesome for those kids to learn a few things, count money back and everything else. I got money counted back to me, and that's important to me because even when I was a young kid running a sporting goods store, the first thing I was taught is how to count that money back and always do it. So it was pretty awesome. And I'm grateful for that opportunity that we have on Saturday to have those kids display their wares. Mayor, we had our Nebo Water Board meeting in Salem yesterday as we continue to look for the needs of our cities, Salem, Payson, our local cities around us. We also, directive from the board was for the technical board to continue and get going on a groundwater management so that we can, as our state is a desert at times, sometimes it's not run so good because we get a lot of rain like we have this last year, which is great, fills our reservoirs, but we are looking to the future and managing our water so that we have, as we grow and continue, people move to this state, we have the water needs. And in conjunction with some of the things, Brandon's on one of the water boards of the state, it is important that we continue to protect that precious resource of ours. Also, the seniors have been off for the summer. They are now open and back, and the seniors are back having their lunch and their first membership meal will be the 1st of September. So invite those seniors. There's a lot of things going on, Wendover trips and things like that you can participate on, come down, and get to know some of the seniors in our cities. The director, Verna Joe, shared a number with us, which was surprising to me, but in our area there's 8,000 seniors that are in our area that could attend, seniors and are that age. And there's a lot going on. Our membership down here is big. Our senior center is full when they're all there. But we only have about 350 members. So to think that there's 8,000 out there that can come and participate and share what they know and stuff is great. So welcome the seniors back to theirs. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Just got a couple of things. Mike mentioned about going up to Heber or Helper. A few of us had an opportunity to go up there and meet with, I met with the mayor of Helper and looked at some of the things that they were doing with their river up there. They've got about 3 miles a stretch of river and shown us some of the things that they have been developing. And so my dad built a First Security bank when I was in high school there, and I remember working up there a long time ago. Let's just put it that way, it was a long time ago. So things have changed quite a bit since then, and so it was kind of nice to see the building was still standing, And I was able to tell the guys some interesting stories and the mayor about it. And but it was nice to see how a city that small, they only have 2,100 citizens, but the things that they're doing to develop their river and making things a little better, and the arts that they're trying to do up there. And so that was good. Also, we had a officer receive a great award. Officer Zach Robinson received the Utah Narcotics Officer of the Year award. So that was a great honor for our group, and I just want to let him know how much we appreciate all he does, and the chief for making these guys be the best that they can be. We've got a great police force here, and I'll tell you what, they are second to none in the state, and that just proved it right there. So great honor to Zach, and we want to make sure he got recognized for that. Great job. Also, one thing that wasn't mentioned, I believe it's this weekend, is our planes, trains, and automobiles down at the airport. We want to make sure everyone's invited to that. What a great opportunity to come down there and see that event. The Candy Bomber will be there. It's always good to have him there. There'll be helicopter rides, and it's just a great event for our city and for our airport. So if you're not doing anything Saturday, come on down, and after you go to the farmer's market, get your stuff, then head down to the airport for that. And just one last thing, as it's mentioned, school has started. Please, please, please be careful as you're driving out there. Those kids are precious. They're crossing the streets. Be aware of that. Even though you've got the right of way, watch for those kids, and let's keep our precious resource intact, and let's watch out for them and make sure they are safe as they're going to school. Okay, consent items.
Motion to approve the consent items.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Mendenhall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. We're going in to we have a public hearing on ordinance Z07-19, changing the zoning designation, amending the official zoning map of Spanish Fork City for the Brent Larson zone change.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. The proposed zone change is located on a property that's adjacent to 1700 West in Leland. The proposal to change the zoning to R115 is consistent with the general plan. Both the Planning Commission and the Development Review Committee have recommended that the proposed zone change be approved. The only thing that's a little bit unique with this proposal is that, and I think you can see this with the image that we have here, the legal description that we have for the property seems to be a little bit off. I know the applicant is working, maybe he's finished having the property surveyed to get some things ironed out relative to how the property is described. So it's very likely that, in fact, this would be my suggestion, if you're inclined to approve the proposed zone change tonight, we simply wouldn't record the ordinance until we have a more accurate exhibit of the property to attach to it than what we have tonight. I believe the legal description needs to shift somewhat to the west. It's not terribly uncommon for there to be gaps, overlaps, and just general errors in certain parts of the community, particularly when you start to get out in areas that are less developed. But again, the Planning Commission and Development Review Committee have both recommended that this change be approved.
Right. All right, since this is a public hearing, I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Argal, a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone that would like to come up and talk about this zone change, feel free to come on up. Just state your name and...
I'm Brent Larson, and that's Ted and Betty Ray's old house. And so, how does this thing work?
Push the button.
Which one?
The middle.
Here. You got it?
There we go.
Well, now we got you. There you
moved
go.
on. So there's an actual,
Okay. My goodness.
wait for it.
There you go.
Okay, so the actual fence line is right here, and it comes over to that building and down, and to that point and across, and that's always been the property line. I had Cole Surveying look at it, and they surveyed it, and he says that is the property line. The problem is this whole quadrant on zone, or quadrant 26, it's all off. And so the whole thing's off how many feet. The bad thing for me is I gotta pay to have all that fixed. Now, we own the property all the way around it, even down here, and it's all shifted. So if you look at, that's Wayne Anderson's house. My property line's right at his front door, so it's
That's
this,
good.
it's this whole area. Keep him locked in there. So that's what we're doing. We're looking to add a garage on here, and so that's why we're rezoning it, so we meet the proper.
Thank you.
Okay?
Anyone else would like to come up? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move we approve ordinance Z0719, changing the zoning designation and amending the official zoning map of Spanish Fork City for the Brent Larson zone change.
Second?
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilmember Beck. This will be a roll call vote. Councilman Argal.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Passes. All right, ordinance Z08-19, changing the zoning designation and amending the official zoning map of Spanish Fork City for the Fire Station 62 zone change.
Once again, Mayor, thank you. There are plans in the works to build a new fire station at the corner of Spanish Fork Parkway and Canyon Road. This proposal would change the zoning to public facilities, which is the most appropriate zone that we have in the community for that type of a community facility. Both the Planning Commission and the Planning Commission and staff have reviewed the proposed zone change and recommend that it be approved.
All right, I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Argal, a second by Councilman Scobes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone from the public would like to come and talk about this zone change, please come on up. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
Motion to go out of public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Argal. Any comments, questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance Z08-19, changing the zoning designation and amending the official zoning map of Spanish Fork for the Fire Station 62 zone change.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Argal, a second by Councilman Mendenhall. This too will be a roll call vote. Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Councilman Argal.
Aye.
Passes. Okay, ordinance 17-19, amending hillside development standards as part of the Spanish Fork Municipal Code.
Again, Mayor, thank you. There's a project that we'll look at a little bit later on the agenda that was the impetus for staff reviewing our current hillside development standards. There's some changes to the standards that would be required in order to allow that particular property to develop. And as we looked at the proposal to develop that particular piece of property and some things that changes to these hillside development standards could do not only for that property but for others that under the current guidelines perhaps would be largely undevelopable, and where it would perhaps be impossible to build some public infrastructure that we think certainly can benefit the community. We saw value in putting this proposal together and bringing it to you. Our engineering department did most of the work in preparing this proposal. We do think that while it will open up some opportunities for development that right now our ordinance simply would not permit, it does so in a very prudent and judicious way to make sure that the end product that would be created with any development is going to be better than how perhaps the hillside sits today. And that's really, I think, the most significant aspect of the changes that are before you with these proposed standards. There are a couple of other details that we've addressed as well, requiring, for example, a greater setback for structures from the top end of a slope, things that I would probably put into a minor category, but still things that we think will enhance the city's ability to regulate development in hillside areas, which, in all honesty, today in Spanish Fork is pretty limited. There aren't that many properties that these standards would apply to, but still, we've observed other communities' experiences in dealing with some heartbreaking, I would say even tragic situations that have resulted with development in sensitive areas, particularly on slopes, with soils and other factors, characteristics that have led to significant property loss. And that's the last thing that we want to see here. So again, we think this does a good job of balancing opportunities to appropriately develop with protecting future property owners. And both the Planning Commission and Development Review Committee have recommended that these changes be approved.
All right, this is also a public hearing, so I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Beck, a second by Councilman Scobes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, anyone that'd like to talk on this zone change or ordinance change, you're welcome to come up. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Argal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any questions, comments? If none, I would entertain a motion.
I move we approve ordinance 1719, amending hillside development standards as part of the Spanish Fork Municipal Code.
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall,
Second.
second by Councilmember Beck. This is a roll call vote. Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Councilman Argal.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Passes. Okay. Ordinance Z09-19, changing the zoning designation and amending the official zoning map of Spanish Fork City for the, how do you pronounce that?
Anella.
Anella Townhome Zone Change.
Some of you, I think, will remember a proposal that you acted on several months ago now to amend the city's general plan. This is the zoning map here. The subject property that we're talking about is located right here. It's currently zoned commercial office. It previously was general planned, all of what you see there in gray, for commercial uses. And the general plan was changed to allow for the southern part of the property, that which is involved in this particular proposal, the Anella Townhomes project, to mixed use in order to allow for this to happen, in order for the applicant to be able to propose a proposed zone change to a residential zone, which is consistent with that particular general plan designation. And with that proposal to change the zoning, you have a proposal for a master plan development for a 102 home townhome development with that as well. So those are the two particular proposals that are before you tonight. First, again, to change the zoning. In this case, it's to change it to R3, and then the request to approve a master plan development for the townhome project. It's maybe the ugliest plan that we have. It's a little bit better. There are two different townhome projects that are proposed, and I'm going to kind of breeze through these fairly quickly and let the applicants address the particulars of their project. Just a couple of points of reference. This is Expressway Lane. This is State Road 51 here that's largely off of this image to the east of the subject property. This is 1100 East right here. So you can see that there is a gap between the area that would be developed in Expressway Lane. I think the biggest reason that gap would exist right now is that a large part of the land between the northern boundary of what exists with this project to Expressway Lane, these are wetlands. Not entirely wetlands, but there are different fingers and so forth, parts of this area that are wetlands. It's possible, certainly, that in the future, the property owner could work with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to, through mitigation or other things, eventually be able to develop that property. But as of now, I don't think there's very much development potential at all because of those wetlands. The proposal involves two different particular townhome products. One is a front load type of a home. That's what we'd call it when you enter the garage directly from the front of the home. The others are configured with these shared driveways where the fronts of the homes face one another, and we would call this a rear load type of a home where the driveway and the garage is in the back. There are amenities proposed with the project, including a playground and pavilion on the east end, another playground here, a little bit closer to 1100 East on the west. The applicant has submitted landscaping plans. We just received an updated landscaping plan. That was either last night or early this morning. Staff's still reviewing that, and I'll touch on that in just a few minutes. But we do appreciate the time and the effort that the applicant has put into preparing plans for this project. Particularly landscaping plans. We think they, over time, will serve the residents of the community well and really create a nice residential setting. Again, these are all kind of generic, so I'm just going to blow through them. The applicant has had these renderings prepared to give you a little bit better perspective on what the development might look like. Streetscape there. And architecture. Architecture is the thing that we've spent probably the most time discussing with the applicant in recent months. This is the front load townhome design, where again the garages are on the fronts, immediately adjacent to the public street. The applicant's done a few different things there, having a couple of different materials on the front of homes, rock, some type of EFA stucco type material, different types of siding then as well. You can see that there's a little bit of variation on the front plane of the building, so that some units are more recessed or protruding than others to provide relief, really with the idea that that potentially makes the buildings look more interesting from a street view. The windows in the garage door as well, that kind of break up that plane that sometimes is fairly stark. And trying to get to this particular perspective here. One of the things that we've talked about a little bit, that is staff and the city council, staff and the planning commission's talked about it more, is what do the ends of buildings that face public space, public streets that might be, or a park, different things like that, what do the ends of these units look like? How do they interface with that public space? Are there windows? Are there doors? And different things like that. Honestly, I think if it were up to me, I would require the applicant to have the front doors of these units, that's the main entry into the unit, actually face the street in the development. We talked with the applicant about that, and they went back and revised their plans and certainly made some changes to, I think, address the fundamental concern that we have about just having a big blank mass on the ends of these homes, so that that would be predominantly what you would see from that public space on the street. They stopped short of moving the doors, and I'll let you talk to them about that if you'd like to. But all in all, staff and the Planning Commission feel pretty good about this design. 102 townhomes in this part of the community where we already have a pretty large number of multifamily units. I think certainly justifies some scrutiny and concern. I think it's fortunate that there have been a number of single-family homes built as well on the east side of State Road 51, simply from the perspective that most commonly there would be less time spent from owner to owner in this type of a house than you would have with a single-family detached home, and trying to manage things from a neighborhood perspective to where there's some balance in a neighborhood between the number of maybe apartments that you might have, or a product like this, or single-family homes, so that there's a good mix over time. I think that's very important. But again, with some of the other development that we've seen in the area, I think we're probably Going to continue to have a fairly healthy neighborhood. This is just a different perspective of the front elevation of the townhomes on the south side that have that rear-loaded garage. And Mr. Mayor, if you're fine, I'll let the applicant maybe fill in any gaps or anything, but just to maybe make this clear, staff and the Planning Commission have recommended that both the zone change and the preliminary plat be approved. I do ask that you consider a couple of conditions of approval. These are, well, one of them is going to become very routine for us until we start to have this prepared before projects get to you. For a handful of different reasons, we think it's important now to have applicants enter into a development agreement with the city. That doesn't require necessarily a lot more effort on their part or staff's, but it's our hope to make some things very clear at the time of project approval so that maybe we can avoid some issues that we seem to have very consistently when buildings are built and people are ready to move in, and builders want to get people moved in to homes, whether they be townhomes or single-family homes, and certain pieces of infrastructure still aren't done. So we're trying to eliminate that confusion that seems, like I said, to be fairly consistent at that stage when people are under a lot of stress and there's a lot of pressure, by spelling some things out more clearly on the front end. So that's the main reason that we want to just have more detail spelled out clearly and to have a developer acknowledge certain things in a development agreement. So we ask that you require a developer to, in this case, this developer to enter into that agreement with the city, and simply that they make any changes to the landscaping plan once staff has a chance to review that, just to make sure it conforms to city standards. So those would be the two conditions that we ask you to consider.
Great. So if the applicant would like to come up, we'd love to hear from him. State your name, rank, serial number.
Andrew Christensen, and thanks for letting us speak with you tonight. There's a couple of things. So if you look at this picture right here, so we have worked with the staff. They're wonderful. We love your staff. We have one thing they did request is to move the doors on the side of those houses, and we have done that on some of the houses. If you can look at this picture. So this would be the door, and we moved that on the side to break up. So when you look down the road,
Right.
It doesn't look like I don't know.
Stone road.
Yeah, a road. And then we've also put windows on the sides, bay windows on the sides that are facing the street. So you can see the bay windows, and then you can see, I don't know, we have some that show those doors facing there. There are some constraints to it, so we don't have each of those houses, but on the first and the last on each intersection, where the intersections are, we will have those doors facing that way. The others we can't because of the parking. We've got 4 different sizes of units in this project. Staff has requested that. We have tried to work with that. I think that it'll work really well. They're fairly different sizes and different shapes, and so we've really tried to vary that to have a product that lasts a long time and has a very long longevity in your community. And so we've got some nice sized parks and some good amenities. We have a landscape architect that loves his work, and he is more than excited, and we like that. And so we'll continue to work with you guys on that, anything that you want. But I think we've done a really good job with our landscaping and our parks. But we're willing to enter into agreement with the city on the development agreement. So that's great with us. So,
Good.
Right.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, this is also a public hearing, so I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
A motion by Councilman Scobes.
Second.
Second by Councilman Argal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone that'd like to come and talk about this project, feel free to come up. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any questions, comments?
My question comes about the road, Dave. I think we talked about this on an initial discussion of what we saw of this site might be developed, but the road in between this and the commercial property to the west, how far are we getting improvement to that road? And this is a little bit of a selfish reason, because I'd take that road. Oh, right there. So where is this road? Is that where it is now?
It is.
Improved right there already?
Yeah.
So what are we getting? I mean, I see we have this to, main entrance that'll get it in and out of this community. This will be a dead end, but you'll have people coming in and out of here as well, and that's a pretty hefty
Yeah.
hit to put your car
Isn't it?
into.
Yeah, it is surprising. You almost have to get out and look down to see exactly how
Yeah.
ominous it is. That definitely is a concern that we've had as staff. The applicant has been great to work with. They've committed to develop from their southern boundary, basically the other side of the road,
Okay.
at least to the curb, to its full width. And we're operating with the idea that that will be done with their first phase, which will be on the west end of the development. And they also will be developing their frontage on the other side, all the way up to, including radius on the corner here on 1100 East.
Okay.
So from here up to 1100 East, the road will be fully developed at that point in time. The applicants would be able to have a connectors agreement approved so that when the property to the west develops, they'd be reimbursed for that side of the road and improvements that they will have invested in there. These improvements and this connection will come with the later phase.
Okay.
I have a question. I just want to confirm, I know with these type of developments, our two biggest concerns oftentimes are green space and parking. I'm assuming they meet all of those requirements that the city has set forth?
Yeah, I don't think they exceed either requirement by a large amount, but they do exceed both
Okay.
our minimum parking requirement and the overall open space requirement for the development.
Thank you. Sometimes it's difficult to see that in a,
It is, and maybe just to illustrate, so each unit will have a two-car garage, which is kind of a wild card because occasionally that's not used for cars, but we count that towards the parking requirement. There will be additional parking then along what is a public street here. This also is designed to be a public street, would be dedicated to the city. So you can see these parking areas here, also on the north side, and parking down here. The front-loaded homes on the north side of the project, their driveway depth is 20 feet plus something. So in theory, two-car garage, space in a driveway for two cars. They have more parking than what we require. Again, just depending on how people use their garages, that number might not be everything that we hope it is, but they do exceed the requirement that we have.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, in that vein with parking, this is not, these streets do not carry LID. They're not the narrower streets, or are they? In which,
Yes, it is.
so how are they
By
public?
narrower, this is the city standard, is how I'd put it.
Well, right.
I think I know
but,
what you mean.
So how well would they accommodate public parking if our LID streets are more narrow?
They won't have parking like you might see in your neighborhood, where people park in a parallel fashion in front of your home. That's not going to happen any place, I think, in this neighborhood. On the north side of the street, and I don't know if we end up red curbing this or we use signage or whatever, but in essence, just because of the frequency of the driveways that you have out onto the street, I think it's more a factor of that than street width. There's just no place to put a vehicle without causing a problem. And it's largely the same on the other side of the street. So when I talk about, I might call it on-street parking, but the guest parking, and guest parking is probably not even the right way to put it either, just say parking, but parking adjacent to the street, This is 90-degree parking that takes up space that's outside of our typical right-of-way to accommodate it. So the asphalt width that you see here is still just as wide as it would be in any neighborhood in the community, and the parking is really just in a supplementary space next to that. But
Right, anyone else? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve ordinance Z09-19, changing the zoning designation and amending the official zoning map of Spanish Fork City for the Anela Townhome zone change with the conditions of entering into the development agreement and the landscape change. Is that right?
Got a motion by Councilmember Beck,
Second.
second by Councilmember Mendenhall. This will be a roll call vote. Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Councilman Argal.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Passes. Okay, ordinance Z10-19, changing the zoning designation and amending the official zoning map of Spanish Fork City for the High Sky Estate zone change.
again, thank you. The subject property in this case is located a little bit to the west of Spanish Oaks Elementary School, which is located right here. There's a development that has been under construction for a few years, Vincent Ridge, that's a little bit to the west of the subject property. 2300 East is the western boundary of the property. I'll talk more about this in a minute, but right now Canyon Crest Drive stops at a pretty abrupt and pretty steep incline that exists right here at that eastern edge of the subject property. The subject property is zoned rural residential. The general plan designates this property for what we call a state residential development. That's the same designation as what the Vincent Ridge development has on the general plan, and as such, we've recommended that the applicant request our R115 zone, which is one of the lower density zones that we have in the community. Again, I'll keep maybe using Vincent Ridge as a comparison because that's how that property is zoned, and we appreciate the applicant's willingness to propose something that's consistent with the general plan. That makes things certainly easier for us as staff to recommend that the project be approved. For the most part, this proposal is really straightforward. There are three things that I think are maybe worth noting. I talked already about the hillside development standards and how they would need to be changed in order to allow the brow of this slope to be modified in order to permit a road connection from the current terminus of Canyon Creek Drive over to 2300 East. That is an important aspect of allowing the subject property to develop with the different points of access that we expect a project with this number of homes to have. I think it's also a really important connection to have for the community. Right now, the available connections from 2300 East over to the neighborhood that's east of Spanish Oaks Elementary School is really, really limited. I would say that that type of access is really poor. So from my perspective, again, I think this is an important connection to have made. I'll come back to that in just a minute as well. Irrigation water and providing water to a neighbor, that was discussed extensively with the Planning Commission. We really appreciate their input. I might let our Public Works Director touch on that here in just a minute, and some ideas that we have, I think, that really could be helpful as we see areas develop where there's kind of a whole-scale transition from agricultural uses and the types of water demands that they have into being more predominantly developed residentially. And I hate to suggest this, but I think it also takes into account the idea that there's a high likelihood that at some point in time there will be further development in the area. So irrigation water is the other issue. And just to talk a little bit more about Canyon Crest Drive. Right now, this is essentially a cul-de-sac. And we've worked in other situations before where people have lived on a dead-end street for quite some time. Really, again, it's kind of like a cul-de-sac, and they like it, and they like it a lot. And it's easy to understand, and I think it's easy to appreciate why they like that. And all of a sudden, having a road like this connect, that changes that neighborhood. I mean, I believe that does change that neighborhood, and it does so sometimes, I think, in a significant way. Canyon Crest Drive, it's a little bit wider than other streets in the area, and that's not by accident. It's intended to carry a little bit more traffic than your typical neighborhood street, yet it doesn't carry so much traffic that we want to limit access to it or to have homes back onto it. So you still have driveways that face it, and it's a real issue for people that live adjacent to that street. Also, that's how people get to an elementary school. So I think we have several things that are in play here with this property's development and this connection occurring that do warrant attention on the part of the city. It's not uncommon for us to have requests to look at ways to limit traffic speed, and I think that's probably the biggest issue that we can do something about relative to Canyon Crest Drive in this part of the community. It's not entirely a straight street, but it's pretty straight. There's one big sweeping curve that's off this image to the east. But honestly, just speaking for myself, there's really nothing about that street today that would make me feel uncomfortable as a motorist with driving pretty quick. And I think it's worth, again, us as the city staff looking at maybe some options that we could employ to do some things that would make it uncomfortable for people to drive faster than they should on that street. So that's one thing that I threw out for you to consider. And just like with the Inela townhomes, we do ask that you require the developer to enter into a development agreement with the city, and also that any water issues, irrigation water issues, be addressed before the city approves a final plat. And I'll take a few minutes maybe. Any questions for me about anything before I talk water?
Just if 14 or 2410 connects, 2410 east, I'm showing that road
Yeah.
will connect through, correct?
2410 right here.
Yeah.
So there'll be 3 points of connection here, here, and here.
Okay.
So those, sorry, I guess that really is 4 altogether.
So I'm safe to assume that if these parents can bring their children here to the elementary school faster, so that this could be a highly traveled road in the, okay.
I would guess so, yep.
Understood.
Yep. Thanks.
All meeting.
And this could change, but Seth was just saying that he thinks these kids go over to East Meadows.
Oh, they do?
But maybe with this connection, that could change in the future. One thing that also, is that okay? One thing that also I'd like to do is support what Dave said about some sort of traffic calming along here. It might be very nice to have some structural traffic calming, whether it's reduced width intersections or maybe a small traffic circle in one of these roads. That actually might be a really good thing to ask for on this. We get most of our complaints from traffic on roads just like this that are long and through residential neighborhoods, and some traffic calming could cut down on that quite a bit. One of the things that we're also concerned about is the irrigation ditches that kind of come through this area and water these fields right here. When you run those through a subdivision, there's some inherent risks. A lot of times it's the irrigation company that bears those risks, but the damage usually occurs to our residents. And so we've tried to work out some sort of consistent policy where we could possibly make it so that it's viable for the farmer to use our pressurized irrigation sprinkler system and not have these ditches in place. And as we've discussed possible policies that would allow this, number one is we would need the model to work out so that when this was being irrigated, the field, the irrigation wouldn't reduce the pressure for the neighbors significantly. Number two, in the past when we've tried to suggest this, we've had the developer work with the farmer to figure this out, and this has been a difficult process each time. And with that process, a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of assumptions on what the city will and will not do occur because we're not in those negotiations. And then at the end of the day, the agreement is between us and the farmer, not with the developer, and the requirements are between us and the developer. And so our thoughts are we would like to propose moving to a policy where we no longer do it that way, but we negotiate with the farmer and we negotiate with the developer and avoid some of the confusion. And quite often, it seems like the farmer in particular is really frustrated with the city at the end because of a lot of the misconceptions that occur when we basically go through a developer to the farmer. And so in that, some of our thoughts in a new policy for this type of arrangement is somehow the savings that the developer has by not having to run pipe, which is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Pipe nowadays is really expensive. Running a pipe all the way through here would save the developer quite a bit of money. That a certain amount of that money should be taken to keep the city whole in an arrangement with the farmer and keep the farmer whole in his arrangements to both install sprinkler systems or drip irrigation systems, but also right now he pays or she pays an assessment each year for the water that is used for farming, and if that assessment goes up significantly because now they're paying an agricultural rate or whatever the rate is that we charge in order to run the water through our pressurized irrigation system, then really the farmer's costs go up significantly and it might not be as feasible to farm. Whereas the developer is saving hundreds of thousands of dollars, we should be able to take and evaluate, how much money would it take for us to basically guarantee the farmer that his costs to water, for the water, are the same before he went into this arrangement, which really benefits our future residents and the developer and cost savings versus before. We also think there's some benefit to the farmer in that he has less liability. Those pipes, if they overflowed, are either owned by his irrigation company or if it's a lateral line, quite often the irrigation company says this is yours. And so we think there's some benefits all around in that, and we think it's a lot more feasible if we, knowing the cost savings, can then leverage that to make the farmer whole and keep the city whole as far as if we are going to create a situation where the farmer does not have increased costs before and after this situation, and I really believe something could work out that would really benefit all three parties. So anyway, if that is a change from how we've done this in the past, and before proceeding, I just wanted to get some direction from you if proceeding in that route is agreeable to you, then we can proceed and maybe bring you an agreement with those tenants in it for this project as maybe a test project, if you will. If you have concerns on that and want to continue to discuss this in a work session, I'm happy to do that as well. But this project is really imminent, and these are kind of the discussions we've had this past week on this and with the parties involved.
So you've talked with these people about this concept, and their feelings okay, or are they willing to do stuff like that, what we've been talking about, or?
Yeah, so the farmer and the irrigation company are supportive. The developer has been supportive of this concept from the beginning, but obviously they'd have to all agree and sign and tell them we wouldn't know. But
Okay, thank you. All right, this is a public hearing, so I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to go into public hearing.
A motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Mendenhall. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone that'd like to come up and talk about this, come on up. State your name.
Thank you. Don Cook from Spanish Fork, and I press
Middle button. It's not like the ones on the bells. So
Okay. I can do better with those. I'm just going to.
you can.
I really can't see
Here, we
which
got
button
another
it is. Thought I pushed that one. Okay, there we go. I'm speaking on behalf of my mom, who lives right there. She's concerned about that. I don't know if any of you were alive in the days of the soapbox derby, but it was a very steep hillside, and then non-motorized vehicles that people would build would they'd propel down those things and go very fast, and they've gotten rid of them for safety reasons. We're concerned about that. That's a very steep incline. I don't know how they're going to do that and still have a residence right there. So we're concerned about speed. I can just see that becoming a speedway for people who want to jettison themselves along that road. That's a concern. Of course, we're also concerned about water and drippage and degrading her property there with runoff. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
If I can get this to work. James Olson. I'm a resident, live right here near the neighborhood. Let's see if I can.
Middle one, yeah.
Okay, so I live just right here on 1700 South. My concern is this throughput right here at 2410. As presently constituted, there's not a light on 2300 East and Canyon Road. Turning left there is just about impossible during high traffic times. It's going to force a lot more traffic down this road. But what will happen if there's not a light there? This is a thinner road right here, and if you follow this around 2600, it heads right toward where the new fire station ends up crossing right there. It's pretty straightforward, and there's a light there. So traffic is going to find its way to where there's a light and opportunity to go the direction they need to go. My kids play on this road. This is a very, very minimal traffic road as it is right now. So, you know, if there's not a light here on 2300, traffic's going to find its way right through here, right onto this residential, right in front of my house. Very impactful for our neighborhood and for me. So that's kind of my concern.
You for that comment.
Thanks, James.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
My name is Dawn Bloxham. I live at that dead-end road, and you're correct, I do love the dead-end road. There's no traffic. My kids can freely play in the front yard without any problems. And we also love our across-the-street neighbors, where they can run across and talk to their neighbors without any incident. So we love having the dead-end road. So I just ask that we try to eliminate the speed. There is a road in our neighborhood on 2900 that is east of here, and the neighbors there can't even let their kids out in their front yard because it's used as a speedway. The Spanish Fork Police Department did a survey and did a speed test on there, and there were cars going 70 miles an hour up and down that road. So we don't want that to happen to our road either. That study was done in 2018, just last year. They did put a sign up there, a flashing sign, to tell drivers what their speed was, but the residents still don't feel safe. So we really want to slow that traffic down because it will become a speedway. It's not only a concern for my neighbors, but it's also a concern for the school because those kids will be walking to school on that road and running back and forth from side to side of the road. And it also will be a concern for the residents that will be purchasing the homes in that neighborhood. So that's just a real concern of ours. We want to keep a real safe and friendly neighborhood. By putting this road through, it's almost like putting a fence across, so we can't speak to our neighbors anymore. So we don't want that to happen. We want to keep our friendly neighborhood, and we will still try to, and we teach our kids to look both ways, but it's really difficult when you have a 4-year-old. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I'm Jim Westwater. I also live, which button is it?
Middle, right.
With the red on it?
Yep.
I live right here. And our preference, and I'm speaking for several of our neighbors, we really, as I think the engineer, you the city engineer, indicated, it's very hard for us to face the notion of giving up what amounts to a cul-de-sac street where it's nice and quiet, it's safe, there's very little traffic. We enjoy that quality very much. And if the Canyon Crest Drive turns into a through street, we're afraid that that will degrade our neighborhood substantially. And our chief concern is the traffic, both the quantity of the traffic and the speed. And as I think the engineer indicated, that if a road does go through there, we would very much like there to be some inhibitions for speed, such as a roundabout, which you mentioned, which could take place either here or at the bottom of the hill. We think that that would be very beneficial. And of course, this is a school zone, and it needs to be addressed in that way. So some kind of a bend in the road or some kind of a roundabout here, something that would definitely slow traffic, would be very, very highly recommended if indeed the road goes through. Ideally, from our perspective, it would be nice to not have the road go through. Another neighbor of ours suggested that currently there is access to the elementary school, of course, from Canyon Crest Drive, but the city has, there is an access from the north end, a little walkway where children and parents can walk their kids to school coming from this area north of the school. And we suggest putting some kind of stairway from this development, if the development takes place, into the school, a stairway from the west going down. So kids and their parents could walk to school instead of having to be driven to school. So that would be a suggestion, too, from our perspective. Ideally, then, not a through street, but if it is to be a through street, please do whatever you can to cut the speed. I understand that the city does not do speed bumps, right? But what about speed dips?
Ooh,
is that?
I remember those days.
We have currently, you know, instead of the sewer system, there are these channels, you know, where water can go, and that slows traffic down a good bit. So that could be another thing to consider. Thank you very much, and I also want to say how impressed I am as a fairly new resident of Spanish Fork. I've been here for about 15 years. How well run the city is. It's a pleasure to live here. You guys and gals are doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I'd like to hear that every once in a while.
Yeah.
So thank you. Come on up.
I'm Gil Berenson. I'm the manager of High Sky Estates LLC. Just want to address a couple of things that have come up. One of them is You know, this is a very steep hill that exists right here at this point, but one of the things that the hillside ordinance change that you just approved a few minutes ago allows us to do, we propose to remove a significant amount of material along this roadway. So that steep hill is going to decrease gradually across, you know, maybe 3/4 of the development. It's not going to be a particularly steep hill at this point, at that point in time. A couple other things that have come up. One of them was the walkway potentially into the school grounds. We did run that by the school district, and they rejected that idea in writing for a couple of reasons that I don't recall actually, but they have considered that, and the school district has declined to do that. And just lastly, I want to say we are open to putting in traffic features. We'll work with staff to do that, and we're happy to do that if that's requested.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come up? Oh my gosh, I guess since you made such a nice comment to it, we'll let you.
We're concerned, and I think one of the first speakers indicated that there was a concern about water, rushing down that area. And if something can be done, if the road goes through, to mitigate that problem, that would be very much appreciated.
Yes. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Argal. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any questions, comments?
Chief and I had a conversation today earlier about a text conversation about 2300 East, so it's kind of ironic. Does anyone have any idea of a signal being at 2300 East? As I think it might have been James that brought that up, that we were talking about. And it's funny because that's why I asked earlier. I keyed in on that as well.
We're actually doing a study on 2600 East, 2900 East, which is also a long vertical or north-south street in this same area that parallels 2600 East and 2300 East. And our master plan is to have some sort of signal, roundabout, something at 2300 East and Canyon Road. It may be that we could study that in conjunction with the 2600 East and 2900 East, and if we put a signal there, maybe a lot more traffic will gravitate to 2300 East, and it would warrant a signal or some sort of a change quicker. So that's one aspect that we are looking at right now. After doing a little research, this area does go to this school, so we should see school traffic going through here. I am aware that the school district does not like to have these backdoor entrances in. They've had bad experiences in the past. Kids can escape, I guess. People can come in.
Oh
my gosh, what do you think this is?
None of us thought of that. That would
People
not
can
have
come
even
in
crossed
that
our
they don't want,
minds.
and I don't know. But I think the main reason is let's say you put that right here.
The walkway.
You have people parked up and down these roads every day when school gets out, waiting for their kids to come. And all of a sudden, this becomes a pickup zone where the residents don't want it to be. And I've seen a few of these taken out just because of that reason. As far as water goes, again, the developer pointed out very well that this steep hill is going to be ostrich quite a bit by lowering this whole area, and that should help. But I guarantee until everyone has grass in their backyards, there's going to be water problems, and really that has to be between neighbors. We try to encourage people to landscape their backyards as soon as possible, but I live in a perfectly flat area of town, and when I built my house, there was water problems until everyone got their backyards in. And so that's something I don't think the city can solve very well, but I don't see it being any worse than anywhere else in town, and hopefully people will get their yards in relatively quickly, and the drainage from yard to yard. But as far as the road concerned, the road goes, we will handle the water on the road.
So I understand why the dip, why the mayor said, because the mayor used to drive on the sidewalk to go around the dip on his way to the high school.
I used to hit them going about 50 miles an hour, so.
But
That old
can you
60
just explain why the city, or, why we don't do more speed bumps and dips?
Yes,
Or
in fact,
speed
we took out the last dip on 1150 East a few years back.
Thank you.
Sometimes they were called Parley Neelies, is that what?
Yep.
Anyway, that poor guy, I feel for him. Anyway, it's really hard on snowplows, and we plow a lot of roads, and we try to go as quickly as we can. It's never quick enough, but boy, when you hit a speed bump or a dip on one of those snowplows, it's scary enough to get in one of those big trucks, but when you do that, it's really dangerous, to tell you the truth.
So there's I keep cutting you off. Sorry,
No,
Mayor.
you're fine.
There's a technology for a removable speed bump. Have you seen that? I drove over one in Springville yesterday.
Yes.
I was surprised.
We've seen them. They look a little too redneck for us right now, but we're working through that.
Way to bring that up, Miranda.
Wow. Just 'cause
So.
It's my fault?
Yeah.
My fault? The Lake Shore councilman.
Yeah. There you go. The redneck guy.
What?
So up
Let
in
that be in the record.
up just west of Maple Mountain, on the road there, you've got what do you call them? You don't call them a roundabout, but you call them a
Traffic circle?
So in residential areas, there is a traffic calming feature called a traffic circle. It's a lot smaller than a roundabout. We have one in town over near our Maple Mountain High School, and it works well. And so one of the thoughts is maybe at the top of the hill, if you will, although it will be more gradual, but maybe up here or here, put one of those in, maybe do some reduced width here. You can't do reduced width on an intersection like this, but you could do that here, maybe a roundabout or a
I think
traffic
that's something
circle
we
here.
Probably ought to look at, because that would help break that up so we don't have a lot of speed through there. So my suggestion is let's look at that to help calm that speed down.
Boy, and that's one of the things we've considered for these roads, and it is a lot less money to do it now at the beginning than later. So I would support that.
And could we put one also, or instead of down at the bottom on Canyon Crest, a little closer to the school? Because I would think that if you're going down the hill, that you're going to be going a lot faster than if you're going up the hill.
So usually put those at where you have an intersection of roads. So if you'd probably look at some reduced width option down there. Maybe an island in the middle of the road would accomplish the same thing. And we can look at that. Again, when you have an already developed road, then the costs go up quite a bit. And so we would love to put these all over town, but
So we do have one by Maple Mountain?
yes. Yeah.
Ask Chris if he was a fan of it at first.
No, I wasn't.
You were not.
That was our first
Mike, have you been?
go at it. I felt like
Well,
it
you
was
studied,
too
right?
small,
Mhm.
honestly.
Yeah.
I even jumped in one of these big snow plows, and I drove through it, and really wasn't a big fan. But
It's a block from Councilman Mendenhall's house, and he can speak to it. I drove it last night and think it works very well.
Yeah.
I'll tell you two things about this. When this road stopped here, and the concern was from our neighborhood of the traffic that goes to and from, to and from the high school, when this connected through there. Two things. This helps. This does help. And the second thing, our neighborhood is pretty aware now of the perpetrators that are through here, because we live by them all. So they are our kids, right? They're going to and from school, which would be comparable to Brandon's not going to have a whole lot of business speeding up and down Canyon Crest because he lives over here, but it will be your kids, trying to get to and from work or getting out to the road or whatever it is. And so I know our neighborhood here with some social media and some outreach there has made it pretty well known which colors of cars are speeding, and then it seems to tamp it down a little bit when they're called out. So you will find that out pretty quick, that it is kids right in the area that are they're going fast. Never adults, never your age going fast, Brandon, at all. But yeah, I think that calming measure. I like the reduced width, and again, this is speaking from my Mendenhall nieces and nephews that live on Canyon Crest and go to that school. So it's pretty evident to me as well that we want to keep everybody safe. So I would support that, all those measures.
Can we go back to Canyon Crest, please? And this map's fine if you want to mosey over there. I live next door to an elementary school on the northeast end of town, and at 3:15, well, they start lining up quite early, really, along 4th North where I live. And so what is the likelihood of now these folks have, all right, Johnny, I'm going to meet you here every day at, as soon as you get out of school. And so the staging of cars along now in front of here, has that been brought up or discussed at all?
Yeah, I think it's very likely.
Okay.
And I don't know what can be done about that.
We, at our home, we don't go home or leave at that time of day. And that's not an acceptable answer at this point. I'm just trying to bring up something that you got your own. Chad just took my wand. So that was something that I was thinking of, and maybe just quickly speak to if you didn't put that road through, because I know that a few of the residents in that now cul-de-sac alluded to. Can you speak to why? I know it's not even an option, but why?
So neighborhoods need to connect.
Right.
And you can't just put them on big cul-de-sacs. This was planned a long time, and we need that connection here. We need that connection here. If you have big giant cul-de-sacs all connecting to big roads, it's not safe. It's not good for utilities. It's not good for public safety. You need these connections, and this has always been planned. I don't think it should be a surprise to anyone that eventually this was to connect.
Okay.
Canyon Crest right now, I'm sorry, mine's
It only works
for
me.
This road right now is not from here, but from here out, it goes all the way out. It's a straight shots for a very long distance, clear out, which is a main road. This school right now, and
wow.
Hey, you're on top of your game today, Scotty.
I'm sure these people could vouch, because this gets very busy at the times Brandon talks about. They handle it pretty well because 2 cars pull in here and out and then back out. A lot of the kids, like they talked about, they meet right here. This is the road, the pathway that goes out to the street, and they meet along this road in order to pick up their kids. This is the problem you have, is the Reese School only has one in, one out. So they got to come in this way, they got to go out this way. This does fix that. However, it does increase the traffic too. And what Kim says is you're going to have people, obviously they're going to park to pick up their kids, but right now they do handle it pretty well. It's crowded for a few minutes, but if you're 5 minutes late, it's pretty cleared out.
Well, I just don't know if there's something that could be to look at there, if there's a remedy before it could potentially be a problem.
Where this road is already developed, there's not an inexpensive way that I can think of.
I think another thing too, that there's so many activities at the school, and we just love that we live next to a school, but there will be the school play, the programs, the night things, and they will have many vehicles parking in front of their homes. And so I guess I'm just bringing that up if it hasn't been brought up so far.
Probably currently are.
Do they already do that?
Well, they-
They don't do that.
Because we're far enough down the road, we're ignoring what you love.
Okay, yeah.
Then you'll probably still be ignored.
Yeah, that probably won't change them. One frustration I have is you have a lot of empty parking spots and people will park on the road because people are more worried about their quick getaway than anything else. I don't know how you solve that either, but.
On that, and Chris, I don't think you can, just from an elementary teacher's perspective, there are kids that parents will park on the opposite side of the street, and despite teachers telling them walk up a half a block to use the crosswalk, there are parents in their cars that will say, come on, it's okay, and then will be upset at other drivers that nearly hit their kids that are jaywalking. And so it's been mentioned that the parents will be telling their kids to look both ways. Teachers tell the kids to look both ways. It is difficult, but that's something that drivers with children, as well as parents with children, even drivers without children, need to be aware that kids are going to dart out into the road, whether the speed limit is 5 or 50, and just to be more aware, because teachers are telling them, the parents are telling them against the teacher's wishes, go ahead and cross, and the kid almost gets hit. That happens monthly. So that's unfortunately the nature.
Any other comments?
I just wanted to make a comment, not with you, Chris, but I appreciate the developer saying that it's going to start becoming like a gradual decrease, because that would be a really steep hill. So that, I think, helped me know that it's going to be a lot less. So I think that will help with the water runoff and the speed a little bit. But yeah, I know.
No, I used to launch on the dips, because with that old 62 Chrysler,
People are
it
gonna
could
kick him out
get
of
that
office.
much off the ground. So, but yeah, glad they're gone. All right. Any other comments? If none, I would entertain a motion. Do we need to include
Yes,
the irrigation?
development agreement and water issues be addressed, right?
And that development agreement containing traffic calming issues that you'll work out in the development agreement.
So I'll make
Separately.
prior.
Right. The final plat would take care of that.
So motion to approve ordinance Z10-19, changing the zoning designation and amending the official zoning map of Spanish Fork City for the High Sky Estate zone change, with the conditions of a development agreement with the city, the water issues be addressed, and as well as traffic issues being addressed before the final plat.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Argal. This is a roll call vote. Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Councilman Argal.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes. So I already did you, didn't I? Sorry.
Aye.
Twice.
Good, you can go twice.
Aye.
All right, that passes. Ordinance 18-19, amending the use subject to conditions in heavy industrial I-3 and agricultural A-E zones.
So this is an interesting ordinance. We now have a Utah Medical Cannabis Act.
Of course we do.
And because we have that, there's some things that we need to do. So I need to give you a little bit of background as to what we're doing. When the state adopted the Medical Cannabis Act, it is heavily regulated. But it also says that if a city has an agricultural zone or an industrial zone, it shall allow a cannabis production facility. And those are broken down into 3 types. There's a cultivation facility, there's a processing facility, and there's a laboratory facility. Well, we have an agricultural zone and we have several commercial zones, so we have to allow these. So that requires a couple of steps. The first step is we need to establish some minimal regulations. And I say minimal because the state heavily regulates these. But we need to adopt regulations that, first of all, require a city business license. Second of all, require them to have a state license. Third, require them to show how they're going to meet the state requirements. So the state regulates them, but we can ask to see how they're going to meet those requirements. And then fourthly, to show that they meet the zoning. So the next step beyond that then is, because we have multiple industrial zones, we need to identify where these can go. So as we're looking at our zoning map, and we're talking about a laboratory, cannabis laboratory is pretty much like any other laboratory. We didn't see any reason that couldn't go in any of our zones where laboratories are allowed. If you feel differently, tonight's the time to speak up and say so. But as a laboratory, we didn't see a lot of difference between different types of laboratories. For a cultivation facility, we only have one agricultural zone. We only have one small area that's zoned in the city. So we didn't see a need to make a lot of changes there, but we did go into our AE zone and clarify that a permitted use now with conditions is the cultivation facility. And those conditions are spelled out in the regulations that I talked about, the city license, show how you're going to meet the state regulations, those type of things. So this specific ordinance makes that change in the AE zone. So the other thing we did now is we need to address a processing facility because we have multiple industrial zones. This is, in my mind, a more concerning one because we've got industrial zones all over. In fact, the whole north part of the city is industrial. Over by the new hospital, much of that's industrial. I'm not sure we want these processing facilities in that widespread area. So what we've done is we've gone into our I3 zone, which is fairly small and is located up where the windmills are. We'll allow a processing facility in the I3 zone. And that meets requirements of the state code now. That if we do that, we've allowed a cultivation facility in our agricultural zone. We've allowed a processing facility in one of our industrial zones. Our laboratory zone, anywhere a laboratory can go, we felt okay about, if they want to check for cannabis or marijuana, they can do that there as well. So then going back to our I3 zone, we also made that with conditions. And again, the conditions are the same to meet the regulations that we spell out in Title V. So the zoning ordinance you now have before you is for public hearing to look at those changes to the AE zone and the I3 zone. When we move out of the public hearing and adopt this, our first item on the new business is the regulations. So we now have talked about that as well. So for the zoning part, at least, we need a public hearing there. Questions?
I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Beck, a second by Councilman Scobes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone that'd like to come talk about this particular issue, you're welcome. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Argal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any questions, comments?
Just what Junior keyed in on the facility potentially being in the areas where we have a hospital commercially, and so if we can somehow limit that, I mean.
This does that. This limits it to the I3 zone. And the only place we have an I3 is up there with the windmill zone.
Okay.
That's in accordance with the state law.
Yeah.
Yeah, the state law says at least, if you have the industrial or agricultural, you have to allow this in at least one agricultural and
You
one
better go to the mic.
Wow.
I'm just saying, it's hard at home. I watch planning and zoning and you people talk over here. It's hard sometimes.
So yes, that meets requirements of state law, which says if you have agricultural or industrial zones, you have to allow production facility is how they define the group of three, in at least one agricultural and at least one industrial. So this does that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for doing all the work on that, Junior.
Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move we approve ordinance 1819, amending the uses subject to conditions in the heavy industrial I3 and agricultural AE zones.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Scobes. This is a roll call vote. Councilman Argal.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Scopes.
Aye.
That passes. All right. New business.
Do you have anything more you want to say on that, Junior?
Unless there's questions.
Okay. Then I would make a motion that we approve ordinance number 19-19, an ordinance establishing cannabis production establishment regulations.
A motion by Councilman Gordon,
Second.
second by Councilman Argal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. That passes. Amending preliminary plat approval for master plan development.
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This proposal is different than most that you see in several different ways. The project currently has a vested preliminary plat approval. I think we have an image of the current designs. This is the currently approved design for Annie's Acres. You'll see that with this design, there's a collector road running through the middle of it. This design is a result of the applicant working with city staff on a number of different issues, including transportation planning in this part of the community for a number of years, and was approved in 2018. Earlier this year, our staff approached the applicant and some others in the area about revisiting the city's plans for streets in this part of the community, and those discussions are how the applicant came to propose this. So in this case, this proposal really didn't originate with the applicant. In fact, they've, I think, forgone the majority of a construction season in order to accommodate the city's desire to take another look at plans for streets in this part of the community. They've been great to work with in terms of being patient and cooperative. And the proposal that's before you tonight is for a master plan development, very similar to what's currently approved. The applicants, with the absence of the collector road running through it, have been able to reclaim some additional space. And this proposal does have, I believe, 7 more units included in it than the original proposal had. It's still well under the allowable density for developments in the R16 zone, which is pretty uncommon. It's pretty uncommon that developers leave much flesh on the bone when they propose developments. You saw 2 other proposed master plan developments earlier tonight, and in each of those cases, the developments essentially were at the ceiling of the allowable density, which is an issue I think we're trying to work through more frequently with developers on now. But given the fact that the zoning has been in place for this property for over a year now, the zoning was changed with the previously approved preliminary plat. There's really not a lot of oversight that the city has relative to approving this project. It meets the city's requirements for master plan developments in the R16 zone. And as such, like I said, there's not a lot of latitude that is afforded to require changes or to certainly withhold an approval of this type of a project, which is in fact the very reason that you don't see this happen often. We as staff are very particular about making sure that properties don't get pre-zoned. You might say we make sure that zone changes don't happen until we have a pretty explicit idea of what a development's going to look like, because it's at that zone change point in a development approval process that you hold all of the cards as a legislative body acting in that legislative capacity. If you don't want to approve a zone change in a project, there's no harm and no foul, and very little risk that there's going to be any recourse against the city if you did that, if you required changes, or if you withheld an approval. When zoning's in place, it's very different. Now, all of us that are involved in the development review process, we're acting in an administrative capacity. The project meets the city's requirements, and there's an obligation to approve it. So it's a little bit more on just the development review process maybe than you would have liked to have heard. I will point out just maybe one other thing, let the applicants maybe add some depth to this. But with this change, they have proposed to introduce a different type of housing product in the development. both staff and the Planning Commission seem to appreciate that addition. The project really is, much like with the original approval, still going to be aimed at some type of a main floor living product, housing product, with the idea that I think it's going to be largely marketed to empty nesters. There's some information in the staff report. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I'll leave that for the applicants, but there are a variety of amenities that the applicants have proposed, and just to make sure that the city manager gets credit where it's due, he has pushed very hard for the applicant to include pickleball courts as one of the amenities in the development. I think that still's a little bit up in the air, but he was very adamant and clear about sharing those thoughts with the applicant. So that's it. Staff and the Planning Commission both, like I said, have recommended that the proposal be approved.
Any questions for Dave?
Yes, Dave.
He asked if he could borrow it this time. For the record.
So I know this is the zone change.
The zoning's in place, so this is zoned R16 today. Did we might have misstated that. I hope we didn't in the staff report someplace.
So what is it? We're just amending the plat, right?
Yeah.
So what, I know this is a very, very skinny road. What kind of work's going to take this road? What's going to happen to that road?
It'll be fully developed on the west side of the street, so additional width, including asphalt, curb, gutter, sidewalk, with a park strip built between the sidewalk and the curb. And I believe the applicant will be finishing the east side of the road, at least to the extent of having a full 10 feet of width developed on that side as well. I'll let them correct me if I got any of that wrong, but in essence, I think you're going to have the same travelable space as what you'd have on any local street in the community.
Phasing, your previous map had phasing. What's the phasing? Is there a map that speaks to phasing here?
There is,
Oh,
yes. So that's
sorry.
what we've been
I
given.
could have went the next.
And I'll mention this as well. This is really what we want to focus on with the development agreement. So really, by way of conditions of approval, again, we'd ask that you consider requiring that the applicants enter into a development agreement on this project as well. We've talked with them and their engineer about that, and they seem to be comfortable with that.
Just one more in that, but in that vein, didn't we have some requirements of what had to be improved to at certain levels of building?
Yeah.
To get out to the main road?
Yes, thank you. So we will allow up to 50 homes on a system that has one access. So in order to get to a 51st home, they'll have to have a separate second connection to some street. And in this case, there are a couple of different ways that they could do that. They could do it by coming to the east. They could do it with the connection of, I guess it's the successor to that road, having this connected over to Main Street here, a couple of different things like that.
So in that development agreement, I know there's been a lot of talk about these homes here. Is there some way we can require some downlighting, to minimize the lighting? Would it be that time that we could ask them and request something like that?
Yeah, and I think some commitments have already been made relative to that. With the original preliminary plat approval, there was discussion, and I think staff took it as marching orders, that we would, with our lighting, which is most likely the main source of any kind of light spillover that you'd have from this kind of development onto neighboring properties, streetlights, that with the installation of streetlights on the east side of the project, using one of maybe several different types of tools, which might be a different type of head on a street light that literally directs light downward instead of the more global types of heads that literally allow light to go in just about every direction and spill into every direction. I know that our power department has used some of those heads recently that are designed specifically to direct light to limit spillover. Typically with that, you end up needing to install more lights because you don't have the same spread. But I think, like I said, staff has those marching orders from the previous approval, and we're committed to make sure that light spillover, particularly along Bradford Lane, that was the main point of discussion before. And also, I'd say, I think the discussion is going to become more broad than that, just about in every neighborhood throughout the community, perhaps as we replace the existing heads that we've been using in neighborhoods, we replace those with heads that might have more dark sky kind of qualities. To some extent, the cat's kind of out of the bag in the community relative to light pollution. And honestly, it's not a Spanish Fork problem. If you're really concerned about dark sky issues, it's a valley-wide problem. But certainly there are things that can be done on a local basis, like in a neighborhood, to limit that spillover. And I think our power department's very, very well equipped to make that happen.
When we do that as a city, it sounds like we will do our best. Do we let the developers know that we would like, maybe in the River Bottoms area, as things develop, that we would also like them to incorporate that? Is that okay to?
Well, one of the things that's been discussed is having the city change its standard, our standard for things like streetlights. And we own them.
Right.
We require developers to purchase and install very explicit pieces of equipment. Yeah, and maybe somebody else wants to speak to this, I can as well. But moving to perhaps a type of fixture like this for the river bottoms or elsewhere, where the light source is embedded in a case up above and is directed downward versus our current lights and the lights that you often see, particularly of this nature where it's kind of a teardrop design with a globe here and maybe the source of light's right in the middle and therefore emitting on more of a 360 degree kind of a sphere than what you have again where the light source is above and it's directed more downward. And I know that there are other types of shields that can be used as well if you wanted to, thinking about horizontally, limit that 360 degree emittance of light to limit spillover onto a neighboring property or those types of things.
I would imagine it would be difficult to have that ordinance or something say that for 1 month out of the year that the light was, we didn't, I don't, you know what I'm getting at, right? Because we all know why we're talking about this. If for 1 month the street lights, weren't on, that probably poses a liability issue. Maybe? I don't know.
That's my guess.
Has that been discussed?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
No.
So you just said,
Certainly.
did I hear you say I had a good idea? Is that what you were were you about to say that?
Well,
because I know it doesn't get said very often.
I don't think he was going that route.
Chad just gave me a pat on the back, so thanks. Just wanted to, for the record, Angie.
Nothing but good ideas, right? I mean,
Dave, can you?
but to your question, absolutely. From one aesthetic perspective, I really like the kind of lights that we've used in Spanish Fork for years and years and years. Kind of the style certainly predates me. I think it's a good look for neighborhoods. There are communities that use other kinds of lights that are pretty redneck looking, I think. But this is, and other types of lights that we could use maybe in non-residential neighborhood kind of settings. This might be a good one for a residential neighborhood. There are other types of fixtures that might be better for use along Main Street. City manager and I had a conversation about that earlier. And all in all, I think it's absolutely something that we should look into.
Especially down in that area.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we should be able to have some options where we have certain areas where we want to keep that down lighting, where we have, like we have down there in river bottoms, and we want to protect some of those nice things that we have down there, and we want to do that. So,
Dave, can I address two concerns? One is last year when we did approve this, we did not approve a fence at that time. Will you just remind us why?
They're a fence.
Like a 6-foot masonry fence, for example. to block light spillover?
Yeah, we did, well, and the landscape plan that was approved before is much like what we have now. We did hear from the neighbors, and I'll maybe let the applicant go through some of this, but during the neighborhood meeting that the applicant held with the original approval, one of the things that the neighbors commented on was not wanting this to look like any subdivision in Spanish Fork. They wanted it to have a different look and feel. Somebody mentioned something during that meeting about not wanting to see a real urban look with walls and different things like that. The applicants proposed, it's actually their landscape architect that designed an open kind of fencing to use around the perimeter of the project and at certain locations adjacent to that collector road running through the middle of the project, with the idea that they wanted a kind of fencing used that would provide some security, that would demarcate the property line, but yet really just kind of disappear. And
the open space.
To keep
still.
it looking and feeling that way. I think maybe it's worth noting that this is a project that will be devoid largely of fences. Property owners won't be purchasing lots here.
Right.
They'll be purchasing the footprint that their homes are located on, and everything else is going to be common area, which I think will be outstanding for this development in terms of how it ages. Typically, when everything's maintained by, it's usually some type of a management company, you have professionals cutting the grass same time every week. You know, maintenance is very, very uniform. It tends to look really good over time. So we're really not talking about fencing throughout much of the development.
I know that was in the notes from last year. One other thing was we put conditions in last year's approval with the River Bottoms Road that the city or the county was going to address at the different levels at that weird intersection.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell us what's been done there, if it's complete? I know some of the neighbors aren't satisfied with what's happened, so if you'll address that.
I'm not sure exactly what's been done.
Okay.
I've assumed it was done and that it was done well.
Okay.
So we had an engineering study done on that, and all of the recommendations of that are not really, really expensive have been done, and we likely will need to wait until, first of all, that area comes into the city and it develops before much more by way of change happens there.
But if it was a condition on approving the plat last year, don't we need to take care of that?
Yeah, so those conditions have been met.
Okay. I just know on the Garcia property specifically, there's like a 2-foot drop that she cannot get into her property. And are we going to be addressing that? Is that the county? How are we going to take care of that?
So I've talked to the county a couple times about that, and they said that they're working on that. I've kind of left that between her and the county, but I'm encouraging the county to get with her. I think you work at the county. Okay. At any rate, we have been following up with the county on that 2-foot drop, but I'm not sure
I know.
how that
just
is
think
solved.
If it was a condition, we better follow through with that. If she cannot no longer get into her property because it's something the city tried to help with, but now she can no longer get into her gate.
Yeah.
Also, the sign was knocked down and has never been put up. So I think there might be some things that staff may want to visit with Diane about just making sure that that condition is met.
Yeah, I think the sign issues are taken care of, but as far as that drop off,
As of last week, I don't think the sign issue was taken care of.
I'll have to get with you
Yeah.
to find out.
The road sign.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay, the curb ahead signs have been taken care of, but I wasn't aware of that street sign
Okay.
issue, so, okay.
So as long as we meet the conditions that we said we would last year, I would be fine with that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Are we going to hear from the applicant first, or no?
Is the applicant here? Oh, well, that's good.
Okay.
You like to
So-
state your name and...
Oh, sorry, Vicki Bradford is my name. So what I wanted to talk about, one thing is the pickleball courts. I don't even know what they are. But,
Your residents
is that
will.
you that want them? Okay, well, whoever. We are having pickleball courts.
All right.
And you can see in the center there the putting green, a putting green. And then also, we are going to have 2 fire pits. We're going to have to design them ourselves. We couldn't find anywhere a picture of anything. So anyway, they will be propane, or natural gas, natural gas. So the residents would have to have a key to turn that on, the fire, for safety reasons. There is the big concrete fence along the west side between our development and McKell's. So that is a 6-foot high.
Is that why this is in there?
Yes.
To show that's the
Uh-huh.
example. Okay.
That's the example, and that'll go along the west side there. Anyway, okay, so what I really wanted to talk about was the fireflies. So Diane Garcia and I got together a couple of weeks ago, and I asked her to meet with me just so we could kind of meet in the middle somewhere. An article came out in the Salt Lake Tribune. Maybe some of you saw that. Oh, actually, some of you commented in that. So after that, I had a few phone calls about why we were against the fireflies and why we're, are you trying to kill the fireflies and stuff like that. So I just want to state that we are not against them in any way. We love the fireflies. They're very cool. And we have no desire to do anything, to harm that. So when I was talking to Diane, she did mention that on 1400 East on the south side, that there's some really good lights with the hoods, like we've been talking about. And I went and looked at those, and they're nice. If you want to see some of lights that would work well on Bradford Lane, that aim straight down. Also, the color of the light bulb matters too, to the fireflies. So anyway, we are planning on doing everything we can to cooperate. So on the homes along Bradford Lane, we can either have motion lights, whatever's suggested, I guess, by the city would be the best. Motion lights or hooded lights on the porches, anything else that would help along, that way on those homes. Also, we talked about having the HOA just suggest to the residents that they minimize using that road during that time, the time that the fireflies are out, which we are totally on board with that too. We can't tell them not to, but just make a suggestion to travel out as least as they can along there. And another thing Diane suggested that I thought was a great idea is that the residents could actually be on board with the whole firefly theme and, be proud of it, that they live near, the firefly colony and just, be, happy that it's there and considerate and respectful of it. And I think that we can, between the lighting and limiting the traffic as much as we can, anyway, we'll do whatever we can to work along that way. And in that article, it also said we had turned down the option of building fences and planting trees, which we did not turn that down. We will be more than willing to do whatever we have to do, or, whatever is required of us, or more than is required, actually, to help with the fireflies. So, okay.
Oh, I have more questions. No, well, like with landscaping, will that come at the final plat? Because this is preliminary, right?
That's a great question. This is almost impossible for you to see and to evaluate, but this is the landscaping plan here.
Okay.
And there are a couple of things on the plan that need to be changed, one of which involves just, we require trees to be planted at a certain spacing and a certain type of tree.
Okay.
We have them spelled out in the city ordinance as shade trees, with the idea that there are particular species of trees that aren't like tall and skinny. Instead, they tend to be taller and have kind of a globe to them, or maybe some kind of a triangular shape to them. They're kind of conical in reverse. And they have the effect of shading streets. They also would have the effect, as they approach maturity, of creating something of a screen on this street. But that requirement would come into play not only here, but in all the streets throughout the development. And we as staff certainly want to make sure that all of just the typical city criteria are met with the landscaping plan. And it seems like light spillover and that requirement really could go hand in hand. I'll mention this as well. We first started working with this company with the original approval of Annie's Acres, and I think they've really helped us elevate the developers game throughout the community in terms of the work that they do. They've done some excellent work, suggesting some of the things that they're anticipating to include in a project after we sit down and talk about, trying to, for example, in this case, do some things maybe to help make the area feel a little bit more rural, or to pay a particular homage to, some historic character and different things like that. They've done a great job in several different contexts on different projects of listening to what might help make a neighborhood unique in the future, and maybe making connections to the community in some way, whether it's some kind of history or something unique about a particular location. And that's one of the things that I'm excited to see with this project, just to see it get developed, with this particular plan in place.
Great.
You guys are both looking at me. I do have one last comment.
Keep going. No.
Hey.
No, and that's to
That's why I looked at you.
To the applicant, and the city staff, I really appreciate that main road being taken out of the middle of that development. I thought it was a lot in the beginning, and so I was happy to see that that's been removed and going in a different direction. And I'm done.
Great. If there is no other, of course,
I do.
Of course, Councilman Sculp's got to have a comment.
Well,
I'll sit back for another 10 minutes.
Right on. Appreciate it, Mayor. I want to address a part of the development that hasn't been touched upon. I received 7 different emails. In most, if not all those emails, the biggest part of contention, aside from just the contentious nature of some of those emails, which was unfortunate, the fact that houses were turned as far as the way they face. Facing the east versus facing the west. Well, I guess they used to face the west. Now they will exit out onto Bradford Lane. A number of those emails had discussed the fact that in doing so, there's light spillage, or light pollution, I guess is the word, and that would further complicate the habitat for the fireflies, which is what seems to be the biggest rallying cry for issues with this development, is the fireflies. Again, appreciate the developers for everything you're doing to try to find a win-win and compromise with that. In addressing those houses and the way they were turned, photography not only was a hobby of mine, but I now teach it full-time at a high school. We have something called a light meter that we actually use when we take photographs of a subject. The light might be real bright or real shallow where I'm at, but I can go over to my subject and find out exactly how much light there is there and adjust my lens accordingly for the pictures I'm going to take. I went around several different neighborhoods, several different houses, my own included, and used a light meter to kind of take a look at front yards versus backyards and the lighting. Typically, if we look at front yards, the front yards are porch lights. Older homes, generally 1 or 2 porch lights. Newer homes, they have quite a few more to kind of light up the eaves and things. And most of those are LEDs with lower lumens. Lumen is what light is calculated in. I also looked at backyards. Backyards generally use floodlights. And if you look at the comparison between porch lights and floodlights, Porch lights generally put off about 160 lumens is what porch lights, the way it's calculated. Floodlights in backyards generally put out around 2,500, 1,800 to 2,500 lumens. So a good 8, 10, at least 10, we'll just keep it conservative, at least 10 times more light is put off from floodlights in backyards than porch lights in front yards. The reason why I bring that up is because there was a lot of consternation about the houses being turned around and that there would be more light pollution coming from front yards than backyards. The argument that could be made is, and again, we're working in hypotheticals. Feasibly, the fireflies will not be affected by any light pollution and any change. Feasibly, in 2 years, with climate change and things, they might die out and not exist at all, despite the things that the developer has agreed to do. So in that vein of making arguments, you can make the argument that in the time period, the end of May, all of June, first part of July, that is typically when people are in their backyards at night, in the evening, doing family barbecues, family get-togethers, different outings like that, where they have multiple floodlights on in the backyard, lighting up the backyard far greater than the couple of porch lights and the headlights that are in and out. Now again, we can't suspect as to they would have them on every night and they would have them on all night. Again, these are just my thoughts and musings. Going through a neighborhood, I went through 2 different neighborhoods this past week, counted 100 homes. Again, a very small sampling of our community, but research-wise, that's 100 homes you can work in as a percentage and a sample size. Of those, 38 houses did have their porch lights on, and this was at 10:45 at night. 61 houses did not have their porch lights on. And this, again, was at 10:45 at night. And so there's a lot of speculation. There's not a lot of study and science. And again, any science that would take place would be the homegrown science like I did with a light meter, judging the light output that comes from street lights. I wandered up Main Street, found it's darker, as we all know, in between the lights. But with that science and anyone else that might do science, it's reasonable to expect that it's darker with the fronts of the house facing the fireflies than it is with the porch lights or the back of the house facing the fireflies. Again, we don't know who's going to turn lights on or off, and we run the risk of neighbors complaining and contention all through social media because this neighbor always has their porch lights on. As I wandered through, there are neighbors, and I do know of several that have all their exterior lights on throughout the night for safety reasons. And as you get with some of ADT and some of these companies that do home security, they actually suggest and recommend that you have all your lights on throughout the perimeter of your house for nighttime security while you're sleeping. So to address that from the emails that I had received, I think the applicant, the city, when it was first approved, the city was very agreeable and wanted to look to preserve the habitat as best as possible of the fireflies, which are in county land, not in Spanish Fork, but Spanish Fork has always been a good neighbor and tried to be a good neighbor with county and other cities that are adjacent to our borders. And the city had looked at that from the get-go, as Councilmember Beck had mentioned. Again, my thoughts are because of the scientific study I did using a light meter, I think that inadvertently the developer and city staff in making this change have made a change that will actually decrease the light pollution or possible light pollution with the fronts of the houses rather than the backs of the houses. Several of the emails talked about the fact that decisions seem to always be made without any discussion. So for the record, and for anyone watching on TV and anyone who will be posting on social media, that is my part of discussion. That's the study and my thought process as to why I think the houses facing the fireflies is actually a better thing for that habitat than the backs of the houses facing. So that's all, Mayor.
Okay. Any other comments?
I was able to reach out to Seth's counterpart in Nibley, up in northern Utah. David Zook is his name. I think have you talked to him? Maybe Diane's talked to him, or some people have talked to him. I know the paper did as well. Had a great conversation. They have a cool habitat up there that they received grant funding for, purchased the ground, and now Nibley, the little city of Nibley that has, they let me know, not a restaurant in their city, has a cool little firefly habitat and brings tons of visitors, and appreciate that about your passion too, Diane, the numbers of visitors that come to see that cool habitat and that passion, and appreciate the Bradfords in your heritage here and what you're doing to your homestead as well. My firefly story is down in Palmyra where I grew up, and it's a long one that I won't say here, but suffice it to say, don't let any kids make wishes for dogs on those fireflies, because that's what I did as a kid coming home from the ballpark, and my mom reminds me of it. And there was a dog on our porch when we got home. There was Tila, little Cocker Spaniel that lived to be 15 years old, sitting on our porch, and that was my wish when I was a kid coming home from. So I'd tell them, unless parents are ready to make that happen, those wishes come true with fireflies. Truly, magic is what Dave of Nibley said. So I'm going to make sure, and it sounds like we have a willing partner. And let's make sure that the city does everything they can to protect that magic that happens down there. I sure appreciated Diane showing us around, but also showing us where those people have come to park and take a little ride to your thing. And I hope that happens for years and years and years to come, which would be a cool thing. And I think we can get it right. I think the directional lighting, I think the greenscape, I wrote that down when I talked to David Zook of Nibley, that greenscape was the important thing that they're kind of doing around their habitat there to try to limit that, and they're working with Logan City, who borders the north of their park there too, to make sure whatever development they do, that the lighting is particular to keep that habitat going. So I'm confident we can do both here, and like Keir mentioned, get a win-win out of this and make sure we're protecting everywhere down there, because it's an awesome place, awesome things happening. Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah, great. I think that's what our whole goal is. We're excited to have those here. My wife's from Indiana, and so when I've gone back there, there's fireflies all over the place, and so yeah, it's fun to watch them, and yeah, do all the other fun things you just shouldn't be doing with fireflies when you're younger, but it's okay. All right. Any other discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the amended preliminary plat for Annie's Acres.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilmember Beck, a second by Councilman Scobes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Resolution 19-19, amending the Smash Fork employee personnel policy concerning reporting of accidents and a hazardous situation.
This is pretty straightforward, just cleaning up our personnel policy. In the report section, it used to require that immediate action forms be held in your glove compartment of your city vehicle. Kind of a little ironic that immediate action forms had to be filled out and then passed to the proper parties. For a few years now, that's been changed. We now have everything online, and it distributes the immediate action form to the proper people. So just really a cleanup of the policy to reflect what we're actually doing now.
Any questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move we approve Resolution 1919, amending the Spanish Fork City employee personnel policy concerning reporting of accidents and hazardous situations.
Motion by Councilman Mendenhall.
Second.
Second by Councilman Gordon. This is a roll call vote. Councilman Argyle.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
Councilman Gordon.
Aye.
Councilman Mendenhall.
Aye.
Councilman Scobes.
Aye.
Passes. Evans Real Estate Purchase Agreement.
So quick trivia, how many utilities does Spanish Fork City provide for their residents? You guys know how many different utilities we have on our utility bills?
6.
Close. You could have up to 10.
Oh,
So that's counting SFCN services as well, but probably more than any other city in the state. The only one we don't provide is natural gas. So with the growth of the city, we've had a lot of talk about that tonight already. There is need to increase the size of our public works facilities. So public works includes power and light, water, wastewater, streets, and so it includes all those divisions that Chris Thompson manages. So I'd like to yield my time to him to have him tell you a little bit about those. Are you guys okay with that?
No.
Okay. No, but just to give the public an idea of what the Public Works Department, which divisions are in there, those are some of those. So we have a need to expand, and so we're proposing that we purchase a piece of property from Evans Legacy that owns about 9.3 acres down close to where our current plan is, our current public works facilities, which works out really well. And so that's what this contract does, is it allows us to purchase 9.3 acres of property for a future public works facility to expand that.
Any questions for Tyler? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I'm getting to it.
I move that we approve the Evans Real Estate Purchase Agreement.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Scobes, a second by Councilman Mendenhall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hampson Real Estate Purchase Agreement.
One more trivia question. How many consecutive sellouts of the rodeo have we had after this year? Counting Extreme Bowls.
56.
Ooh.
16.
If you don't count Extreme Bowls,
2004.
57. Yep. Good job, Stacy.
Because my work.
Or sorry, yeah. All right. So our arena approximately holds about 8,500 people. As you guys have probably heard already, the rodeo, I've only heard positive feedback with one exception, and that is the parking. So this contract authorizes the city to purchase property that's adjacent to the existing fairgrounds property. It's important to note that the county would actually help to purchase this piece of property. This isn't as straightforward as some property purchases. There is a 6-month money-back guarantee because of some environmental issues that are on the property that we want to make sure that we can clean up at a reasonable cost. So there is that caveat in this contract that if we want, we can reverse the terms of this contract, and it would no longer be Spanish Fork City's property, but it would go back to the original owner. You've probably noticed there's already some cleanup going on. As of 4:45 today, I was down in that area, and they had a backhoe out there that was taking down the red brick building in the front. The other building behind that will come down here soon, later this week. And so there's some progress being made there. With that, I guess any questions? Any questions on this?
I have a question. I'm sure this will be a question that many of us get asked, though anyone who's watching this. Provided this purchase goes through, the environmental issues are taken care of, fiscally without, undue pressure to the city. The question that we will probably be asked is, well, how soon can I park there instead of park up and over yonder and have to walk?
So as soon as the state gives us authorization that we can use that piece of property, once it's clean, then I imagine what we'll do, it won't be asphalted immediately because that'll be quite expensive, but I imagine we can somehow make it possible to park there. So, yeah.
Hopefully for the next 57th sellout.
There you go.
Motion to approve the Harmson Real Estate Purchase Agreement.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilmember Beck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Rocky Mountain Power Corridor License Agreement. Oh,
boy.
That's the best of all the game. Okay, I can't tell you how excited I am to be presenting this to you. I was Chris did leave. It was at least 10 years ago that Chris and I basically all but got kicked out of Rocky Mountain Power's office and said, we will never do this. So this power corridor that goes all the way along the eastern side of our city, we had visions of trail, and some cool things going on. And so this is the beginnings of that. The times have changed and some people have changed, and so now they're amenable to allowing us to put some greenway inside of this power corridor. So what you have before you are two documents. One is a temporary license agreement because we need to start putting up some walls on this area because homes are going up, and the actual lease agreement needs to go to Portland, to Pacificor for approval, which could take some time. And so we've got a temporary lease agreement before you. The actual lease on this one section of the trail, you've got both the red and the blue, which are two different phases, but you've got 14.39 acres that we will be leasing from them for $10,000 a year. And we've got a 30-year lease, which is written into there. So miracles do happen, and with your approval, we're moving forward.
Awesome.
Any questions on the lease?
That'd be nice.
Yeah, and you've probably seen some of the preliminary, we need to approve the license agreement and the lease agreement, and then they'll send it off to Portland for approval. But we've got a really nice greenway master plan for this whole area. You're going to...
Can we approve both of them at the same time?
Did we get some emails on this about fences and stuff? Did we get with some neighbors?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. They were just wondering what was going on there. I mean, we're trying to standardize the fences along there. Obviously, we don't want hodgepodge, a whole bunch of different types of fences in there. But this is going to make a really, really awesome greenway for our community with a lot of different variety of things besides just trails, because it's a very wide corridor, as you know, and there's some really neat things that we can do there. So
when we're inside the corridor, we're going to be seeing that precast fence on both sides of us.
How wide is the corridor again?
100 feet. Huh? Oh, did I miss?
Will we?
It's over 100 feet. How's that?
Will we be able to?
For you, it's either a gap wedge or a wedge. Probably a gap. 120, you can probably make it with a gap wedge.
Do you have a 45 in your bag, Seth?
He does not have a 45 in his bag. He doesn't even know. He thinks it's a gun. Or a record.
You don't remember 45s.
Wait, Dale?
Yes, sir.
Will we be able to continue this on down through the years?
We certainly hope so.
Okay.
Now, Rocky Mountain Power doesn't own all of the corridor, but our dream initially was, yes, to get that whole thing so that we can continue it clear down to
Foreverland.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this piece here will go from Slant Road up to the railroad tracks off of Highway 51.
Any other questions, comments? If not, make your motion include both F and G.
Motion to approve Rocky Mountain Power License Agreement and Rocky Mountain Power Corridor Lease Agreement.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Argyle, a second by Councilman Gordon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Board appointments, I would like to recommend and appoint Todd Mitchell to the Planning and Zoning Board.
I request approval for the mayor's appointment to
Second.
the planning board.
Got a motion by Councilman Mendenhall, a second by Councilman Argyle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Take it away.
I move we go into closed session for reasonably imminent litigation and land transaction.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Gordon, a second by Councilman Mendenhall. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
What you making, Suzette?